It was just past noon, and Emily had just started her shift at the roadside diner. She stepped out back to throw some stale bread and potato peels into the trash. That's when she noticed a man crouched down next to the dumpster. He wore dirty clothes, and his hair stuck out in all directions. He looked like he hadn't slept well in days. Emily froze for a second, her heart beating faster as she watched him, worried he might be dangerous. He lifted his head, and she saw fear in his eyes. It wasn't the wild, angry look she sometimes got from wanderers. Instead, it was a tired, guarded look, as if he was waiting for someone to shout at him or chase him away. She tried to relax her face and give a small smile. "Are you hungry?" she asked gently. He gave a weak nod. Without hesitating, Emily hurried back inside. She knew her boss, Jan, wouldn't like it if she gave away food for free, but Emily couldn't stand the thought of this man going hungry. They threw away enough leftovers every day, so why not help someone in need? She grabbed a plate and scooped on some scrambled eggs, bacon, and toast. It was simple diner food, hot and filling. Just as she was about to head back out, Janice caught sight of the plate. "Emily, what are you doing?" "We can't just give food away," Janice said, arms crossed. Emily held her ground. "If it's a problem, I'll pay for it from my tips, but I'm going to give him something to eat." She didn't wait for permission. She pushed back outside and handed the plate to the man. He took it carefully, like he wasn't used to being given anything. "Thank you," he said in a rough, low voice. Emily nodded and stepped back, giving him space. She didn't want to make him feel watched, like an animal at the zoo. A strange feeling ran through her, like an unanswered question. There was something about him that was different. He didn't look like a typical homeless man. He carried himself in a certain way, even though he was hunched over and dirty. Emily couldn't explain it, but she felt it. Maybe it was the way he spoke, or the way his eyes seemed to hold so much behind them. Back inside, she tried to focus on her tables and customers, but every few minutes, she glanced out the window, wondering if he was still there. A nervous energy buzzed inside her chest, refusing to go away. She didn't know yet, but this small act of kindness was the start of something big, something that would shock her to the core once she learned who he really was. I wiped down the counter as I kept one eye on the window, still curious if he was out there. The afternoon sun was bright, and the diner was busy with customers stopping in for a quick meal. Emily tried to focus on her job, refilling coffee cups, clearing plates, but her mind kept drifting back to the man outside. She peeked out again and saw him still lingering near the dumpster, finishing his food. He didn't shove it into his mouth greedily, like some might when they're starving. Instead, he ate slowly, as if he'd been taught to take small, neat bites. This odd detail made her heart skip a beat. Who was he? A few minutes later, during a lull in customers, Emily stepped outside once more. My pulse quickened as I approached him, half expecting him to disappear like a ghost. But he was there, leaning against the wall, the empty plate at his feet. "Thanks again," he said quietly. His voice sounded calmer now. Emily leaned against the brick wall and lowered her voice. "No problem. Everyone deserves a hot meal." She paused, then asked the question that had been bugging her. "Have we met before? You look familiar." He let out a short laugh, more like a huff of air. "I doubt it," he replied. His eyes shifted, as if scanning the area to make sure no one overheard. Emily frowned. Maybe she was imagining things. Still, something about his posture and the way he spoke felt important. "You sure?" she pressed gently. "You talk like someone who isn't used to this." She gestured at the alley, the trash, the rough conditions. He looked away, silent for a few seconds. "I've been a lot of places," he said at last, not giving a clear answer. Emily wanted to ask more, but the back door swung open, and she jumped. It was Janice. She glared at Emily and then at the man. "Emily, get back inside. We can't have this," she snapped. A feeling of unease swept over Emily, like she was about to lose a chance at a big secret. She nodded and slipped back in. As she took orders for new customers, she kept thinking about him. Why was he so polite? Why did he feel familiar? She pictured him wearing a suit or giving a speech, something totally different from this alley scene. Could he be someone famous who hit rock bottom, or someone who lost everything and ended up here? Emily knew it sounded crazy, but she couldn't ignore her gut feeling. There was a tension in the air, like the moment before a storm breaks. She wanted to talk to him again, to figure out this puzzle. By the time her shift ended, she looked outside and found he was gone. Emily sighed, feeling a strange mix of sadness and curiosity. She had fed him once, but her hunger to know more was just beginning. I stopped dead in my tracks when I saw him again 2 days later, looking even more worn out. It was early afternoon, and the diner had a steady flow of customers. Emily spotted him near the parking lot sign, his eyes darting around as if he expected someone to catch him. She couldn't ignore him. She filled a small paper bag with a sandwich and walked outside. My heart drummed a little louder with each step. She approached quietly and didn't run when she handed him the sandwich. He took it and gave a small nod. "You came back," she said, trying to sound calm, though her mind spun with questions. "Just passing through," he said, looking down. He didn't eat right away. Instead, he studied her face. "Why are you helping me?" he asked suddenly. "You know it could get you in trouble?" Emily shrugged. "It's just the right thing to do. I don't know who you are, but you needed help." She searched his face, hoping he'd reveal something. "You sure we haven't met? Maybe I've seen you on TV or something." He tensed, and for a moment, Emily thought he might walk away. Then he said, "I'd rather keep my life before this private, if you don't mind." A strong tingling sense ran through her whole body. She understood that he was hiding something. But what? Was he some kind of runaway millionaire? A business leader who lost it all? Her mind ran wild, but she couldn't bring herself to say the name that popped into her head. Elon Musk? That was too crazy. Why would a billionaire be in a dirty alley behind a diner? Still, his slight accent, the way he spoke carefully, it reminded her of the interviews she'd seen on TV. Could it really be him, or was she losing her mind? He cleared his throat. "Thank you for the sandwich," he said softly. "You've shown me there's still kindness in the world." Then he stepped back, making it clear he didn't want to answer more questions. Emily swallowed hard, an unsettling wave of excitement passing through her, like standing on the edge of a big discovery. As she returned inside, her thoughts swirled. She had to figure this out. If he was who she suspected, it would be the biggest secret she'd ever held. For now, she kept it to herself. She decided that she would keep helping him as long as he came around. Maybe, if he trusted her, he'd open up. If her wild guess was right, the man outside was not just anyone. He was someone powerful, famous, and incredibly wealthy. Someone who would shock everyone if they knew he was here, dressed in rags and begging for food. Emily's heart pounded as she served customers, waiting for her next chance to talk to him again. The crash of falling dishes in the kitchen made her jump, breaking her train of thought. Emily snapped back to reality and tried to focus on her work, but over the next few days, she couldn't stop wondering about the mysterious man. She kept looking outside during her shifts, hoping to spot him again. Just when she began to think he had moved on, he reappeared. One evening, after the dinner rush, Emily saw him lurking near the side entrance as she cleaned a table. Her heart gave a quick flutter, and a new jolt of nervous energy ran through her. She waited until Janice went to the stockroom. Then Emily slipped outside, where he stood with his back turned. She noticed a bruise on his temple. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly, placing a hand on his arm. He pulled away gently. "I'm fine," he said, but he winced a bit. Emily frowned, worried someone had hurt him. "Look," she said, voice low. "I'm willing to listen if you ever want to tell me what's going on." He gave her a thoughtful look. "You're kind, but you can't fix this," he said. His voice was calm, but it carried a sadness that made Emily's chest tighten. She felt sure now that he was hiding from something, or someone. "I'm just trying to learn something," he added softly, not explaining further. Her stomach turned with anticipation, like she was close to a big secret. Emily wanted to shout, "Are you Elon Musk?" But it seemed too insane. Yet every clue pointed that way. The accent, the careful way he spoke, the sense of intelligence. She had watched enough interviews to recognize his mannerisms. He didn't offer more details. Instead, he said, "I should go," and disappeared into the darkness. Emily was left alone, staring at the empty alleyway. She bit her lip, frustrated that she still didn't have answers. Back inside, Janice noticed Emily's distracted look but didn't comment. The customers were winding down, and soon, Emily would end her shift. She spent the rest of the evening thinking about what she would do if her guess was right. Should she confront him with his name? Should she keep quiet and just keep helping him? An excited, almost electric feeling buzzed in her head. If he really was Elon Musk, what on earth was he doing here, living like this? Was this some test to see how people treated him when he had nothing? Emily decided that next time she saw him, she would take a chance and say it out loud. She had to know the truth. As she locked up the diner that night, Emily looked into the empty darkness behind the building. She whispered to herself, "If it's really you, I hope I find out soon." I gripped the counter tightly and almost dropped a plate when the TV showed Elon Musk at a press conference. The old TV above the grill played a news report. There he was, neat and confident, talking about rockets and electric cars. Emily's eyes narrowed as she studied his face, his way of speaking, his slight accent. It matched the man outside almost perfectly. She couldn't deny it anymore. The dirty stranger had to be Elon Musk. It was insane, but she knew it in her heart. My stomach tensed as the truth sank in. She remembered how he ate quietly, how he thanked her, how he seemed familiar. It all fit. When her shift ended that evening, Emily waited outside, hidden in the shadows. She felt foolish, but she couldn't let it go. After about 30 minutes, she saw a figure at the corner of the alley. It was him. My heart pounded like a drum as I stepped forward. She stood before him, the dim light from a street lamp giving just enough glow. She took a deep breath. "I know who you are," she said, her voice shaking slightly. He stared at her for a moment. No one spoke. Then he sighed and lowered his head. "I thought I was careful, but I guess not careful enough," he said softly. Her eyes widened. "So it's true. You're really Elon Musk?" Hearing it come from her own mouth sounded crazy, but he didn't deny it. He nodded slowly. "Yes, it's me." He paused, looking tired and sad. "I needed to see how people treat someone they think is a nobody. I wanted to remember what it feels like to be ignored or helped without fame and money getting in the way." A wave of disbelief and awe washed over her. Emily's heart raced. This was the biggest secret she'd ever discovered. "But why here? Why this diner?" she asked, her voice trembling. Musk rubbed his face, leaving a smudge of dirt on his cheek. "I've been moving around, staying under the radar. I chose random places where I thought no one would suspect me. I wanted to see real kindness, not planned charity." Emily's mind spun. She'd fed him, worried about him, and now she learned it was all part of his search for real human goodness. She couldn't help feeling both honored and a bit tricked. "What happens now?" she managed to say, her voice quiet. Musk looked at her kindly. "I go back to my life, but I won't forget this place or what you did. You reminded me that good people still exist, that kindness isn't dead." Her heart felt full, like she was part of something much bigger. She nodded, tears almost coming to her eyes. The night air was cool, and the parking lot was empty and quiet. Emily realized she had changed his view of the world in a small but real way. She stood there, stunned, as he explained more. They stood in the quiet alley, and Elon Musk told her about why he was doing this. He said he'd grown worried that people treated him differently just because of his name and wealth. He wanted to see how strangers acted when they thought he had nothing. It was an experiment, a personal journey. Emily tried to understand. On one hand, it felt strange. He was one of the richest men in the world. Yet here he was, dressed in rags, testing humanity's kindness. On the other hand, she admired the courage it took to leave a world of comfort behind, even if only for a short time. A surge of emotion swept through her: pride, curiosity, and even a bit of fear. She worried about what this meant. Would anyone believe her if she told them? Probably not. Did he expect her to keep it secret? "I guess you're heading back soon," she asked softly, trying not to sound upset. She felt a strange sadness at the thought of him leaving. Musk nodded. "Yes. I've seen enough to know what I was missing. People like you, who care with no agenda, are rare and precious. It will shape how I make decisions in the future. My companies, my charities, all of it." Emily's chest tightened at his words. Was it possible that her small act of kindness could have an impact on the decisions of a powerful billionaire? A strange hope bloomed inside her, like a small light in a dark room. He reached out and gently took her hand, giving it a light squeeze. "Thank you, Emily," he said. His voice was sincere. "I know it might seem odd, but you helped me remember something important, that decency and warmth can still be found where you least expect it." She blinked back tears, feeling both proud and overwhelmed. "I'm glad I could help," she whispered. The night felt peaceful yet charged with meaning. At that moment, the diner's side door swung open. Janice poked her head out. "Emily, what are you doing out here?" she demanded, suspicion in her tone. Emily turned, her heart jumping. When she looked back to Musk, he was already stepping into the shadows. Before she could say anything else, he was gone. A feeling like standing at a crossroads washed over her, unsure of what would happen next. She returned inside, her mind racing. She had just talked with Elon Musk, one-on-one, and learned his secret. She wondered if she'd ever see him again. Maybe not. Maybe that was the whole point. As she finished cleaning up and said goodnight to Janice, Emily felt changed. She knew now that sometimes the biggest secrets hide in the most ordinary places, and a single act of kindness can touch someone's life in ways you can't imagine. "I almost dropped a glass when I saw him walk into the diner, clean, well-dressed, and in his usual look." About a week had passed since their last meeting. The afternoon shift was slow when Elon Musk stepped through the front door, this time with no disguise. He wore a neat jacket and jeans, and his hair was washed and trimmed. His face was familiar now from all the TV appearances Emily had seen. None of the other customers seemed to recognize him right away. Janice was busy counting receipts at the counter. Emily, her heart pounding, approached him as if he were any other customer. "Can I get you something to drink?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. Musk looked up and smiled softly. "Coffee, please, and whatever special you recommend," he said. His tone was warm, and his eyes held a quiet understanding that this moment was just between them. An electric energy filled the air, even though no one else knew the truth. Emily poured him a cup of coffee and brought him a piece of pie. She set it down, and he leaned in, speaking so only she could hear. "I wanted to thank you properly, face to face, without any secrets." Emily nodded, tears threatening to form in her eyes. "I'm glad you're all right," she said. She couldn't think of anything else. Her emotions were all tangled up: gratitude, disbelief, excitement. He took a sip of coffee, placed a neat tip on the table, and then reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a small white card and slid it over to her. "If you ever need anything, call this number," he said. There was no name on it, just a phone number printed clearly. She stared at the card, understanding what it meant. A direct line to him if she ever needed help. She nodded, speechless. A warm feeling spread through her chest, knowing this was a moment she'd never forget. Musk stood up and walked toward the door. Janice finally looked up, her eyes widening a bit when she realized who had just been served in her diner. She said nothing, too stunned to speak. As Musk opened the door, he turned and gave Emily a small nod. It felt like a silent promise. He wouldn't forget what she did. Then he stepped outside and was gone, leaving no cameras, no big speeches, just a quiet memory that belonged only to them. Emily stood there holding the card, feeling an overwhelming sense of awe. She had fed a homeless man who turned out to be one of the richest and most influential people on Earth. He had come back, clean and normal, to say thank you. Now she had a story no one would believe, but the truth lived in her heart. Her world had changed in ways she never expected, and all because she offered a simple plate of food.